Good morning. This is the Blainsville podcast, where we have conversations that are worth hearing and seeing. You can watch each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And for more information and about our past shows, you can go to our website, which is behindmadeblainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we share positive news and information about people and organizations both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Guryan Tighe, who's founder and executive director of Forage, for being my guest today. And Guryan, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay. And I should mention that Guryan is often described by her clients as I just love that, as a fear technician. And we'll talk about that in just a second. She's a successful leadership coach, workshop facilitator, communication strategist, author, and founder and executive director of Forage, with the belief that understanding and working within our fears rather than trying to conquer them yields more professional success and personal fulfillment. And so, Guryan, the first thing I do when I speak to a guest on the air is I'll find out in terms of as a kid, you grew up where?
Just north of San Francisco.
Okay. And by the way, where are you now? Are you north of San
I am.
Francisco?
Yeah, I've lived
Oh,
other places, but I've come back here.
okay, you're back in San Francisco. Let me ask you then, as a kid growing up, did you always know you wanted to be a fear technician? Was that your
No,
goal in life?
I certainly did not. I always knew that I found people fascinating, but I definitely didn't know where that was going to take me. And it was just about 10 years ago in life that I started on this journey. And it actually wasn't even fear. I thought it was empathy. And it was empathy, interestingly enough, that led me to fear.
Interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. So before you got into what you're doing now, what had you either studied to do or what had you been doing in your life?
Yeah, so my studying was really in communications because I do find people so interesting. And I did a lot of peopling. So everything you can put a relations after. I did public, analyst, investor, influencer, and that actually led me to become a chief culture officer. And it was when I really started working for these businesses they wanted to make a difference in the world, but I had to keep resigning when leadership wasn't in integrity. And that actually made me decide I wanted to reverse engineer the process and help leaders be in integrity, which helped me guide me to empathy and then fear.
It's interesting you said before just now a chief cultural, what do you call it? Chief
Chief
cultural.
culture officer.
And what's interesting about that is, in a way, I'm glad you're not that anymore because unfortunately, that's a bad thing to some people. It seems you can't mention culture, you can't talk about that. And so, in a way, it's kind of a way you're not calling yourself that, but that's kind of a shame. So, I'm interested then how do you shift then from being into, we'd say empathy, it was empathy into how do you make that shift?
Yeah, so I sat down, I kind of thought, let's build a model. I think empathy can be innate for people, but I think it also can be taught. And when I sat down to really think about how you would teach somebody empathy, I started to understand what was standing in the way. And what was standing in the way was fear. So I actually I started with a hypothesis when I started my business around the impact of fear in decision making. And then about 10 years ago, as I said, I started coaching people. And in so doing, focusing on fear for 10 years really gave me all of these incredible insights into what I think is one of the most misunderstood and really beautiful assets. But we don't see it that way because we fear fear. So we don't talk about it and we stay away from it. And it really has become a minefield of just fascinating information that I think really helps empower people
Yeah.
if they understand it.
How did you become smarter about this? Or did you study it or did you experience it?
I do believe all research is me search. So yes, I definitely experienced my fair share of fear in my life, and I just wanted to understand it more. And then really in starting to coach people about it, when I started, I wasn't sure. I knew that I was committed to helping people, and so I hoped that that was enough. But really, I didn't study it. What I studied was in the practice. So in having thousands at this point of conversations with people about fear, about their relationship with fear, I was really able to understand what applies to everybody, what is unique to people, and really almost start to learn the language of fear, which when we do, when we have that information, we can start to interact with it in a way that actually benefits us.
And I gotta love that title you call it Fear Technician. It's just one of the great titles of all time. Have you ever met another technician?
I, I haven't.
Well,
And when I first came up with it, I was nervous to use. Actually, I remember the first person I told, and they said, "Do you bring fear into sets on music on movie scenes?" And I said, "No, not at
or,
all. I talk to people about their fear."
or I could just say you scare people, the whole thing
Exactly.
would scare you. But it's like same thing too. So I came up with title. I call myself a chief encouragement officer,
Oh, I love
But,
that.
but I really like it. But I love your description. And so let me ask you, put you on the spot. If somebody says to you, what does a fair technician do in 200 words or less or no? And what is a fair technician?
A fear technician is someone that helps you understand your relationship with fear and what fears currently might be having you automatically react to things in life instead of intentionally choosing to respond. And your fears actually show you your pathway to freedom and authenticity. And if you understand them, you can be yourself more fully and live the life that you want.
And what's fascinating about this, at least to me, is that I've never really thought about it. And I guess probably a lot of people have never thought about this. So let me ask you, in terms of thinking about fear and not putting me on the spot, but what are the fears that people typically come up with or you can encounter? And I guess they want help in dealing with these fears.
Absolutely. So, two really common ones, a personal one for people is the fear of rejection, and a professional one I hear all the time is imposter syndrome. So these are just two examples, and really, I think a lot of people fears start at a young age because we there's so many constructs of what your life should look like, what success is, all of these, what beauty is, what all of these things, and so we start to build these protective mechanisms, which are really driven by fears. And so if we actually look at those fears are showing us where we want to grow. Take imposter syndrome, for instance. When I got that first job in PR, I thought as soon as I got through 11 interviews, I thought I fooled them. And I remember actually at the time, my present to myself, my congratulations present was a pair of vanity glasses so that I looked smarter. But I always,
Do you still have them, by the way?
I do, I do. I haven't had to put prescriptions in them yet, but and so I always had the thesaurus tab up because I wanted to sound more eloquent and articulate than I currently thought that I did. Now, I was being cruel to myself because our self-critics can be so loud. But if I actually just allowed the imposter syndrome to show me what if I looked beneath that fear, it was showing me that the job really mattered to me, that I wanted to provide value. And maybe I didn't pay all that attention in college and I needed to up my game as far as vocabulary and presentation were concerned. So that imposter syndrome was literally having me look at the place that I actually wanted to grow in order to be the best version of myself in that scenario. So if we can start to understand our fears and lean into them, to be in conversation with them, they have so much information about the very places that we do want to go.
Do people acknowledge the fact that that they have this imposter, or I guess that they never really thought about it until they
Yeah,
work with you?
it's interesting. I think no, because of my title, people that don't want to talk about their fear don't come to me. So I do, that is my marketing, is I really only work with people that are willing to do this work. But I find even though it's scary, but so is living under fear. And so as soon as people have one felt experience that, oh, I can actually have a different relationship with my fear, one that's empowering, then it becomes an open book. I mean, then it's amazing what people are willing to share, not even with me, it's with themselves, because we fear so much. Many people don't even name it, to your point, internally. So it really becomes this amazing treasure trove of information for people to explore.
Now, this idea of fear, does come into other things as well. For example, the one I'd always heard that people have the greatest fear of, you've heard this of public speaking, that's up there. Does that come into play in terms of people you work with?
Definitely does. It comes all the big ones: the fear of public speaking, fear of moving, fear of transitions, fear of unknown. That's my favorite one because if you think about it, everything in the world comes from the unknown, everything, but we fear it so much. right? Which is why it's really important to understand our relationship with it. I'm going to give you a little background as to why we do this.
Please.
But we never learned the difference really between rational and irrational fear. I don't like language of overcoming or conquering because we have a fear center in our brain. It's called the amygdala, and it's meant to protect our survival. So if you're in the ocean and a shark is swimming towards you, it's that fear center that's going to have you swim towards the shark and punch it in the nose or swim away. That's that fight, flight, freeze. One other F, fight, flight, freeze, that they discovered about 10 years ago is called fawning, which is when you appease the threat. This is the home of people pleasing, which is a very common one I see today. But so we have that amygdala to protect our survival. That's when our life is in risk in the present moment. However, most people are living unconsciously to irrational fear. Irrational fear is the future tense. What if I don't succeed in that public speaking event? What if I get up and forget what I have to say? What if I'm not good enough for this job and I tricked them during the interview process? What if, what if, what if? If we don't understand that, then we react the same way. As I was saying before, the difference is I want people to be an intentional choice versus automatic reaction. But if we don't understand those future fears, then we might react fighting the threat, fleeing the situation, or appeasing, because that's what's built into our system. We have to teach our brains the difference between rational and irrational fear.
This discussion reminds me a little bit of the TV show probably before your time, The Fear Factor. Had you ever seen that show?
I do have a vague memory of it,
You
yes.
know, and it was my daughter's favorite show when she was a kid. We'd watch it together. But I'm trying to think, do people come to you, and now it's reminding me of something else, but do they come to you and kind of identify their fear, or do they know their fear and say they want to help in overcoming it?
Some do and some do. It depends on the person. A lot of people, I find the most frequent thing I hear when people come to me is they feel stuck. They feel stuck, and that could be in their personal life, it could be professional life, it could be in a job, it could be in a city that they don't know where to go, whatever it is. But it's kind of right before a transition when people don't know what to do and they feel stuck. So again, going back to those fears, our fears are teaching us where we want to grow and where we want to go. But if we don't understand that, oftentimes that's the kind of the fight, fright, freeze. So people might just stay where they are because unfortunately, okay enough is the home of stuck.
No,
And so when things get, were you going to say something?
no. I was just wondering, can you then help them get beyond that is there a time framework, or how long does it take typically?
It depends on the person. There's not an algorithm I use. So depending on how dedicated somebody is, I do believe change is possible. There's an added, I've heard many people say people don't change. I actually watch people change all day long, and it's beautiful. People that want to change can change. If you're asking for a magic number, if that person is really willing to commit their mindsets and behavior to change, for whatever reason, I've seen like in 6 sessions, somebody has the tool sets, the mindsets, and enough practice that they can go and do that. And then some people might go on and come back occasionally just for a check-in, a refresh. But it really depends on what that person is willing to put into it. I do think every single person has the capability and capacity to apply themselves to change, because we are self-aware beings. It's wild, but we can observe our own thoughts. If we can observe our own thoughts, that means that we actually can start to change our thoughts.
One
And
of my favorite one of my favorite clips of all time is a Bob Newhart clip where about Stop It. Do you know that clip? Oh, I owe it to you. He plays a psychiatrist,
okay.
and somebody comes in and they have all sorts of fears, like you're talking about. And he says, I'm just going to tell you 2 words. And that's all you have to remember, 2 words. And whatever she says, stop it. And I won't ruin the punchline to it, but I'll send it to you. You'll love it, but you'll use it in your work, to get people to stop it. But can that be done? Can you stop something instantaneously?
So actually, I'm going to give your listeners 2 tools to walk away
Please.
with today. So a lot of that is patterning. The brain is fascinating, and I wish I wish it was something that we were all taught about. I wish, reading, writing, and the brain. But every time we make a decision, we fire a neuron down a pathway.
Okay.
And if we're in a similar circumstance and react the same way again and again, that pathway becomes what we call a superhighway. And then our brain loses the ability to realize there's a decision there. Now, I bring this up because most people, not everybody, but most people have been running self-critical thinking on loop. In fact, I remember the day I was walking down the street in San Francisco and I stopped myself in my tracks and I said, if any of my friends talk to me the way that I talk to me, I'd punch them in the face. There's just no way. So what we want to do is break that pattern of that self-critical thinking and then engage the critic. So the first tool is just to break the pattern. And that's what, instead of stop it, I call nexting. So every time you have a self-critical thought, you just say next, next, next. You might say it 13 times, you might say it 33 times. And all you're doing is getting to a neutral place, which might mean I have to do laundry, or I'm hungry, or something just very neutral. The first is just breaking the pattern. The second, and I'm going to give you an example of this. So when I did name my critic, I named her Gretchen. Gretchen is not a bad name, but I knew a Gretchen when I was young that bullied me, and it started with a G, so I kind of liked that it was close enough. But when we name our critic, we're actually able to create some space so that we can see what their playgrounds are when they come around, because it's not all the time. Now I'm going to give you a tangible example of when I'm going to let Gretchen just attack me, or I'm going to turn towards her. So I could sit here and say, I'm the worst granddaughter. I'm a terrible granddaughter. Or I could turn towards Gretchen and say, hey, what are you trying to show me? Oh, that I want to make an uninterrupted hour this weekend to call my grandmother. Okay, one was super valuable. The other, not so valuable, pretty cruel on loop. However, if we can engage that, our fears are actually showing us that something matters to us, that something's important. We just unfortunately have not been given the tools or the permission, honestly, because I think fear is powerful. Look how fear is used in the macro through histories. Fear is used to control people. It does not behoove the powers that be that people understand their relationship with fear. All the more reason why it's such an important relationship and topic in the world we live in today.
What you've done, I just love it. I love giving the name to the concept. There was a Gretchen at one time?
Yeah, there was a Gretchen when I was young at camp that used to bully me. And so when I stopped that day, I was like, when have I allowed bullying? And it was like Gretchen. And it really helped because though we want to create space so we can see the playgrounds, she's still a part of me. And so it's not about stop it, get out. It's just like fear. It's not about conquering or overcoming. It's about understanding why is she showing up and what is she here to show me?
Have you ever been in touch with Gretchen afterward?
I have.
Okay, is this cool? I mean, are you still in touch with her?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
so
she still comes up.
okay. I mean, have you been in personal touch with her, contact with
Oh,
her?
that Gretchen. Oh, I thought you meant my critic. No, I have not.
No.
No, I have not.
And
But I would actually thank her because she's played a big role in
if
this.
she's listening, or we should try to track her down, where we'll dedicate. Have you written a book yet?
I have. It's published. Yes.
Okay, is it deal with these topics?
Yeah, it's in fact Gretchen is named in the book. I mean, not her full name, but Gretchen is listed in the book.
Well,
Yeah.
let's try to dig her up, but I just love it. Her book is dedicated to Gretchen. Great concept. But that's interesting, though, to actually. So, one of the things you do, you actually tell people to give the concept of fear a name.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it starts to create space and it starts to show you it's different playgrounds. We're not all scared of everything. Each of us are scared of different things. And so I really, at the basis, I think fear is showing you two things. Backwards, fear is showing you what you want to heal in your life, what pains that you have that need healing. And forward, fear is showing you where you want to grow, which is why I named my company Forage. It's courage with an F, which is forage.
I
But I
love that
think
too.
that if you think of any courageous decision you've made in your life, any courageous decision, I would guarantee you that the moment before you stepped into your courage, you were in fear.
By the way, to come up with that name, how do you come up with the name for that person?
The self-critic.
Yeah.
Normally, you'd be surprised when I ask people, most people, it's like, they're like, I know what it is. And I'm like, okay. And it's either something like me where they have a personal experience, or maybe it's a character in a movie or a game or something that they responded with. And then some people want to sit with it for a little bit, and then they'll come back to me a week or two later and they'll tell me that they've got it. But most people that do have a critic, because they're eager for it to change. Nobody wants to be imprisoned by their critic, and especially when they realize that that very element is also the asset that can give you your freedom. It's
Working with you, do you practice this with them? In other words, do you practice talking to the Gretchens of the world, or is that something you work with clients?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one work, and then I do group work, which can be corporate workshops, it can be talks on stage. And in a lot of the one-on-one work, in group work and on one-on-one work, I will have people interact with their critic, because it's more than, again, like if someone says to me, I have imposter syndrome, that's not really enough for us to work with. But if I start to ask, okay, well, what is the specific story that fear is telling you? What is the actual detail? Then we can start to understand what the value is. Not at the high level, I'm afraid of rejection, but what's beneath, what specifically are you afraid of? What are you trying to protect from the past? What has been rejected? What are you feeling insecure about? Then we can actually start to get to how again, not only can you heal, but what that's informing you of how you want to move forward.
And as we're talking, I'm looking at that word then, or the name of the company. The name of the company is Forage, right?
Mhm.
Um, is that I'm trying to think out loud. Is that a word, or did you make that up?
I made it up. It's courage with an F.
Is there a word forage?
Uh, Forage is a word, but it's spelled differently. It's like, I think mushrooms forage for Trump,
Right.
or pigs, excuse me, forage for mushrooms. So this was kind of a play on that, because I actually do think you are foraging yourself.
So I love
And
it.
so
Yeah,
again, there's definitely that exploratory. Go ahead.
no, but I love about it because yeah, I'm looking it up and there is forage, but spelled differently, and it has nothing to do with what you do. So I just love so that's pretty cool. You came up with a word, forage.
A word and a title. I just come up with a whole,
Well, no,
yeah.
we should try to get, how they recognize words. That'll be your next, that way, wouldn't that be something if you got it in the next edition of the
Let's hold for
dictionary?
that, Blaine. I would love that.
No, talk about something really cool. So tie that into, well, before I tie into your book, so you mentioned there were two things you work with people on. So the one thing with courage and fear, dealing with
Well, so
that.
no, that's the basis. So basically, really what I'm trying to do is help people be in choice. What it looks like might take different form if I'm with a group or one-on-one, or again on stage, depending on the medium, it might shift a little bit. But at the true basis of my work, I want people to choose the life that they want to live and then work towards that. Most of us don't understand our relationship with fear. There's a lot of fear around us, and people can start to metabolize that. And again, if we go back from very young ages, we're kind of told what success looks like, what your life should look like, what happiness looks like, what all of these things. So people start subscribing to constructs and shoulds without even asking themselves, is this true for me? Is this what I want? Most people haven't even defined what success means to them. So that's an interesting place to start. And so I think our fears, again, kind of, they show us where we got away from ourselves, what we chose to subscribe in, right? There might have been a fear that had us do that as opposed to listening within. And then that combined with where we want, what we're afraid of is actually, it's kind of, I think the universe has some irony to it. And if there's any ironic relationship, it's that with fear. Literally, fear is showing us where we want to grow by telling us not to go there.
And
It's
so
a
tie
Yeah.
that in, if you would, then into the fact then you also somewhere along the line decided to write a book. When did you write this book?
It came out last year.
Oh,
I
okay.
started writing it probably when I started my business. And actually, I had tried a few others. I didn't think it was a book. When I started my work, I actually thought it was a podcast. So I'd like to give you credit. Podcasts are very difficult to get off the ground, get going, continue, edit, recording all the pieces. So I had tried a podcast with a friend of mine and wasn't successful in that endeavor. And then I actually, after George Floyd, I partnered up with a policeman and tried to build a training program for police. And we did create the content. We ran a training at the Capitol for a number of reasons that didn't come into being. And then it was a book. I always knew it was important for me to get the message out. I didn't know what the form was going to take. And it ended up being a book, and I was fortunate enough to be paired with Simon and Schuster and HCI. And last August, I published the book based on all these findings that these 10 years had shown me of being in conversations with people about their fear, and really what a beautiful and misunderstood asset it is for us. And I think it helps you, for whoever you are, it helps you be yourself more freely. And then I think it also, going back to where we started, I think when we are who we are, the ability to allow other people to be who they are is kind of the output. So in my group sessions and my big workshops, I ask for key takeaways, and one of the main ones is empathy. And I don't actually ever bring up the word empathy. When we understand our fears, empathy is kind of a byproduct, which is pretty fascinating.
And what's cool about the book itself is that a lot of people, authors especially, fear writing a book, or, and by the way, do you get authors who work with you at fearing the completion, or you may have had fearing a doctorate or fearing, schooling, they're afraid of that. Do you work with people on that?
Absolutely. And then there's a few things I'll one more tool for your listeners. So when we're in fear, we're in that amygdala, that, the fear center in our brain, but there's a few practices that can actually move you neurologically from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex, which is the home of curiosity, creativity, connection, decision making. And those three things are gratitude, curiosity, and purpose. All of those, when we are experiencing them, our brain activity is in our prefrontal cortex. So now I'm going to bring it back to the example that you just said, which is when I'll even make it personal. When I'm writing a book, it was real easy for me to say, why me? Who's going to care about what I have to say? I haven't been a writer. How am I going to write a book? But my one-liner for purpose is, my why is bigger than I.
I love it.
Which means what I'm doing it for matters more than my discomfort. So that could quiet the fear, allow me to stay in service of purpose, of what I'm doing it for. And that really enabled me to get through some of those. It's not, again, we're not going to eradicate fear. It's more just understanding why it's coming up, which is, this was really important. And I wanted to apply myself to this, as do many authors and people that are any creator.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Well, from the time when I really applied myself, it was probably 2.5 years.
So you have this, and it's pretty exciting, gotten picked up, by a major publisher. Do you see this as the first of other books?
It's an interesting question. I've heard that. I didn't see myself writing that book, so it's hard to say I see myself writing another one. And absolutely, if more content comes to me, then I would happily continue on this journey. And now I really want to do what I can to spread the word, because I do feel like it's I feel like any time is important for people to understand their fear, but it definitely feels important in the world that we're living in.
Do you write a blog?
I don't currently.
Okay, I'll talk to you about that too. But
Okay.
it seems it seems that there's a blog waiting, to be written, and I'll tell you an easy way to do it. It's funny, the name's escaping me. I was trying to research it. I can't come up with it right now. But I'm reading a book, and it's a bestseller, and the author in the very beginning talks about the concept of getting beyond being paralyzed, just counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you familiar with that concept? As a matter of fact,
you know why I think it's fascinating, and I am familiar with it, even though I don't follow that one. So everybody that works for me has one word written on their desk, and that's this word. And for people listening, yes, pause.
I love it.
I think it's the most important word in the English language, because pause is the space between reaction and response. Reaction is that unintentional, knee-jerk, oftentimes fear-driven reaction, versus intentionally choosing. And sometimes just a breath, which might be what the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is doing, can have you pause in that moment so you can turn towards curiosity as one of those examples of what moves you from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. And a great way to bring you into a present moment is two questions to engage your fear with. What am I telling myself is true, and what is true? So let's go back to that Guryan Gretchen grandmother example. What am I telling myself is true? That's that irrational fear. I'm a terrible granddaughter. I'm the worst granddaughter. What is actually true? My grandma is really important to me and I want to call her this weekend. Those two questions, I'll repeat them one more time. What am I telling myself is true? And what is true? What am I telling myself is true is the story that's fueling the irrational fear. And that can help bring us back to making sure that we're responding instead of reacting.
It's probably very exciting for you when you work with somebody, either individually or the group. And do you sometimes actually see it where they have that aha moment, that it's just listening to you, I'm getting that feeling that I'd love to have it, I'm working with you, and all of a sudden it just hits you, bingo, that's what I should be doing or what I need to be doing. Does sometimes happen to people?
I'm smiling, I'm beaming smiling because it does. I get to go to the messiest, darkest places with people in service of that. And that's the best part. We don't just stay in the mess and the darkness. It's just a throughway. And I skip away from my desk many times a day because I get to witness that moment for people. And it's incredible. It's a gift.
What about what Zig Ziglar used to talk about? Are you familiar with Zig Ziglar? Motivational speaker. But he would say a checkup for the neck up. And you kind of alluded to this beforehand. Do people need that checkup every so often? They work with you and then all's going well and all of a sudden they forget it or they need to be reminded of what they need to be doing. Does that happen?
What I was saying to you, it's because of the neuroscience, because we have patterns. A lot of us, our brain loves patterns, and we do things a certain way again and again. And so sometimes it's easy to slip back into old ways, especially when we need them most, because when we need them most, we're probably in fear. And so then we revert back to old ways. The good news is once we can unlearn while we learn new things. It's not linear. So you can unlearn old patterns while you're creating new patterns and new pathways. And sometimes, I think the reason why I love the check back in occasionally is because it reinforces the idea that we're not meant to do this alone. Nobody's meant to figure it out and to go through all this stuff on their own. And so occasionally, if you have an accountability where you can come back and it can be reflected to you, either how much you've shifted or a reminder of some tools that helped you, what a gift that connection helps us navigate through what can be messy times of life.
The nice thing I would imagine working with you is that you're coming at it from a dispassionate standpoint. In other words, you don't have ownership into it. You don't have a relationship when you work with somebody. Can this be done though with a significant other or somebody you have a relationship with? Can they be taught to help you get beyond the fear?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, and that's in part why I wanted to share a book with the world, because I don't get to work with everybody. And I think that I put every tool that I use because I really think that people can. I think they can start to practice differently. And I think gosh, in partnership, I mean, it was interesting. I was just talking about this with my partner, but if people had the ability to have these conversations, not only would relationships be different, but I think our world would look very different. And so, yeah, I definitely think I believe that everything is a practice, meaning we're practicing something all the time. So what are you practicing? Are you practicing self-awareness? Are you practicing curiosity and purpose and gratitude? Are you practicing turning towards your fear? And actually, what I love that you just brought up about being with people. So this is, I think, is fascinating, but we're taught to speak, read, and write. We're not taught to listen.
Right.
That's wild, right? So even just starting to listen differently, listen without agenda, listen just to witness the person you're with, you'd be amazed how much I think people are very capable of their own healing if actually they're listened to.
Do you ever work with couples?
I have worked with couples. Yeah,
Because as you're speaking, I'm thinking out loud that that would be the concept rather than just to teach it to an individual. If he or she would be able to then learn it with somebody else, I would think that'd be kind of a cool thing to do.
absolutely. I think like most, I think it was can't remember the name is escaping me now, but all change begins with ourselves. And so I have found the people that have done individual work with me are able to bring it into a couple setting as opposed to just a couple that's unfamiliar with the work, starting there. And it definitely can be done. It again, I think it depends on how much people are willing. A lot of self one-on-one work, people come because they want to change. In couples, it really depends. Is that couple coming because they want to, or is the couple coming because they want you to validate that the other person is wrong? You know, it depends. But if there is a willingness and a desire to grow together, then absolutely this works in groups, it works in organizations, it works in individuals. It's really accessible to all of us.
What you said just reminds me of a TV show I just saw. It was a series, and the couple were going to a therapist together. But the guy was paying the therapist to how to control a situation,
Yeah.
which isn't what therapy, I guess,
No,
should be about. But it was
no.
just what you said. Where do you see this? Where do you see you going with this? Say, I won't even give you a time limit, but you're working with people. Where do you see yourself going with this in the future?
Yeah, well, like I said, if I stay in service of my purpose, I want to get the word out as best I can. So actually this next year, I'm really looking forward to I'm trying to be on stages and speak to more people and reach more people, so that people can really shift their relationship with fear. And that's, for now, that's really my goal, is to, I think I built the business, I had my hypothesis, I wrote the book, and now I really want to get it out in the world.
Good for you. If folks want to get in touch with you, either to find out more about your book, or by the way, the book, I can assume you get it from Amazon.
Yes.
Okay, and the name of the book is?
Unmasking fear, how
Amazing.
fears are our gateways to freedom.
Okay, and so if folks want to get in touch with you to find out more about you or working with you, or by the way, do you do any of this virtually?
I do virtual workshops occasionally. Mhm.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so if they want to find out more about you or have you come on board as a speaker, what's the best bet to reach you?
So the website, which is Courage with an F, so that's Forage, FOURAGE.io. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under my name, Guryan Tighe. So those would be the two best places.
Okay, well, I thank you, Guryan Tighe, for being my guest on this edition of the Blanks World webcast. Also, I thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and hopefully one of these days we'll somehow bump into each other. Or next time have you ever been to North Carolina?
I have actually, yes.
Okay, well, I'm in San Francisco once, so who knows? But anyway,
Who
this is
knows?
good. This is great, Gurian. Thanks an awful lot.
Thank you. And thanks for putting this work out in the world, Blaine.
Great.